Hey, what's up, everybody? You are listening to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions, a podcast to help you create and sustain healthy sexuality and a great life. I am your host, Craig Pera, and we have a special guest today. As some of you know, Michelle and I went to Loveland, Colorado for the Big Tent Summit. And we got to sit with and learn from some incredibly powerful healers. They're the nonprofits. Anybody who supported men almost was there. Nonprofits, researchers, experts, counselors, therapists, coaches. And I met this incredibly brilliant man who so kindly agreed to be on my podcast. And let me tell you who he is. His name's Rick Broniec. He's an author. He's a speaker, he's a men's coach, and a skilled workshop facilitator. I got a little taste of that just meeting him. I could feel his space. He's been a leader in men's trainings with the Mankind Project since 1990. He's facilitated men's personal growth workshops in 14 countries on 6 continents for thousands of men, which gives him an incredibly unique perspective that he has on our issues, what we need. He's an Amazon bestseller, The 7 Generation Story, an incentive to heal yourself, your family, and the planet. Book number 2 was A Passionate Life, 7 Steps for Reclaiming Your Passion, Purpose, and Joy. And the book that I'm reading now, Power Tools for Men. This is his 3rd book, focusing on men's healing work, and is co-authored with his great friend, Blueprint for Healthy Masculinity, published in May of 23, became an instant Amazon bestseller. And you're going to find all his links down below. Rick, welcome.
Oh, Craig, thank you. It almost feels like I wrote that introduction.
I know, right? Can you imagine?
Beautiful.
But it's a good one.
Good to see you. It was great fun being with you and Michelle at the Big Tent. Great fun.
Yeah, it was so awesome. And it was so great meeting you, Rick. And you've got a week-long ayahuasca sacred retreat in Brazil that I want to talk about, the book, and there's a few things that we're going to cover today. But I have to ask you, how did you get here? Can you share a little bit of background in your journey and what brought you to this place?
Wow, that's a big question, Craig. I started doing men's work in about 1988, 89, and I did the Mankind Project in 1990, as you mentioned. And that was a life-changing experience. It just opened me up to how little I knew about what being a man meant. It opened me up to the deeply spiritual work that men's work is for me. And it gave me an opportunity and a venue to practice my leadership and learn a lot about myself. It completely changed my life. I mean, I've been in a men's group nonstop for 35 years. And
Wow.
every week, just about, we get together, we support each other, we know each other. Those are the men who know me the best. Those are the men who don't take any bullshit from me. I hope I can say that on your podcast.
You can. You can.
And when I went through life changes, many of them very significant, terrible divorces, loss of a child, loss of parents, for example, those men were there for me 100%, came to my house, held me while I sobbed, loved me up like you cannot believe, and literally saved my life. I mean, that's the depth of the work that we do. I know you do this similar work too. It is phenomenal. Fast forward 35 years, I moved from Wisconsin, where I was living most of my life, to San Diego, which I just love.
Mm.
Met this amazing woman who's a sex coach and a expressive arts therapist, and also, like me, a retired public school teacher named Michelle. We married only a little over a year ago, so we're both married to wonderful women named Michelle, and we just have this incredibly fabulous relationship. We travel all over the world, including Brazil, as you mentioned earlier. We right before the Big Tent conference, we were in Costa Rica for 2 weeks and hooked up with Chris Kyle, one of the founders of the Big Tent. He's a good friend of mine. So he talked me into coming, and I'm so glad I did. So here I am 35 years later. I am a leader trainer in men's work. My wife and I work together in the realm of sexuality and relationships, coaching couples. We don't do that too much anymore because she's decided she wants to retire and be a grandma. She had her first grandchild in December. Love doing that work. It's such powerful, potent work, as you well know. I'm still in a men's group. I still lead trainings for the Mankind Project and around the world. I feel extremely blessed, extremely blessed. So that, in a very short nutshell, is the life and times of Rick Broniec.
Oh, Rick, that's beautiful. And I love that perspective you have because you've been doing this for a while. Tell me, what do you think are the deepest issues that men face today?
Boy, that's a good question. Undoubtedly, the two top ones that I see is this epidemic of isolation. We talked a lot about that at the Big Tent, how so many men do not have close friends. They might have friends they go to sporting events with and whack on the back when your team scores a touchdown, but they don't have men that they rely on, they share deeply with, they're authentic with. So there's a deep pain of isolation. I call it the epidemic of isolation. And that isn't just in the United States, that's all over the world. Men are acculturated to be loners, to compete
Suck it up.
with each other and not cooperate with each other. Like women are taught to be cooperative, men are taught to be competitive. And when I'm competing with you, then you're always watching, what am I going to take from you? So we don't have those close relationships in general. And that leads to tremendous isolation. That explains, I believe, why the suicide rate for men is about 4 times what it is for women in the United States. But here's a telling statistic. The suicide rate for divorced men is 10 times the suicide rate for divorced women.
Wow.
I know, that's a big wow, isn't it? And yet we do almost nothing to support men in dealing with these rather tragic issues. I think the reason for that is that men get, when the divorce happens, they get separated from their only support system, which is their partner, wife, and oftentimes they lose contact with their kids, they lose their homes, and they have no place else to go emotionally and spiritually, so they become despondent, and many men, and they end up hurting themselves, which is awful. I hate when that happens. I mean, I love men. I love working with men. And I don't like to see that happen. The second big wound that men carry, the big issue that men face, is commonly called the father wound. So many of us, Craig, haven't had a close, loving, connected relationship with our fathers. I hear this constantly when I'm leading men's trainings. My father never told me he loved me. My father never told me he respected me. My father never hugged me, never kissed me. And again, that breaks my heart. I mean, men need that as much as women do. And for all of us out there that are fathers, love up your sons. Tell them that you're proud of them. Tell them you love them. Tell, hold them, hug them, kiss them. Let them know that they are so important to you. Because there's an epidemic of that also with men who feel like they never really connected with their fathers. A lot of times the fathers aren't in the household when this happens. Sometimes they're present, but they're so involved in their careers or in their own woundedness, their own whatever, that they're not there for their sons.
And so is there something uniquely nefarious about the father wound versus the mother wound? I think a lot of us guys, when we do therapy, are pulled towards the mother wound. And I guess everybody is different, but I can only think of myself where that's where the physical wounds were. There was actual wounds there.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time to, and even having children, to appreciate the impact of that disconnect and performance centric relationship. As well intentioned as it was.
No, oh, of course, of
Uh,
course. I mean, I don't blame my parents, or I don't want anybody to blame their parents, because they did their best. And frankly,
mhm.
my father didn't have any relationship with his father at all. His father came back from World War One, a Hulk, terribly, terribly wounded physically and emotionally from the war, and never recovered. And he died when my dad was only 14. So my dad had no guidance. He didn't know. And I honestly, I don't blame him. And he and I later in life developed, because of the work that I was doing and reaching out to him, developed a very, very close relationship with him, which was very, very sweet. Most men don't have that opportunity. I believe the father wound is more poignant because men look to their fathers to see what being a man is all about. I want, so many of us when we're 5, 6, 7 years old, and we look up to dad and say, oh, I want to be just like dad. And of course, what are we taught? We're taught the man box from so many of our fathers. Don't be emotional. Don't acknowledge your pain to anybody. Just tough it out, and all those things we've talked about. And that's what men pattern themselves after, their own fathers. And if their fathers are distant or not present, then they become distant and not present for themselves, for their kids, and so forth. And it gets passed on, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now, with the mothers, the wound is very different. The wound from mothers is, we spend 9 months in our mother's bellies, and she gives us life. And then we're born, and either we're breastfed or fed by her. She gives us life. And we spend the next 30 years trying to break away from our dependence on the female.
Mm.
And many men code that as that the feminine is trying to hurt them or hold them back or contain them, not my mom. They broaden it to all femininity. So if I am angry about femininity and want to break away from that, then I can hurt women in my life as well, or I can hurt my own feminine side, the part of me that can be feminine, that can be loving and generative and sweet and connected. So it's a different wound, I think. I do a lot of work with men in both the father wound and the mother wound. I think we all have work to do with both parents, but it's quite different in my experience, at least from the perspective of men's work. I'm not a therapist.
Yeah, well, in one of the statistics that I read, Rick, that the single greatest predictor of incarceration is the presence of a father. So when
Absolutely.
you extrapolate that, as it may not, God bless, doesn't apply to all of us, but it says something really unique about the leadership that comes from a present father. And then there's the example of its absence.
Absolutely right, Craig. And not only incarceration, but the level of violence that happens with men who are not having close relationship with their father. They act out, and they act out on themselves by drinking, drugging, all the other addictive things that we do, including, of course, porn and stuff, things like that. And they act out on others in violent ways. And again, it perpetuates this male myth that that's how we're supposed to be.
Well, you mentioned something that I heard for the first, well, at least it rekindled in me. I don't remember hearing it before, the man box. And so I looked that up and I saw some of the beliefs that are in the man box, like real men don't cry, suck it up, you should be able to take care of yourself. If you don't stand up to someone who's picking on you, you're weak. If you're not a heterosexual, you're not a real man, and the
Oh,
list goes on and on. Is it fair where that's the misogyny and the brokenness and the unhealthy cultural norms and values that is that the man box?
I believe so, absolutely. Misogyny is definitely a result of that kind of thinking. And what we do, Craig, as a society, and of course, I'm making a broad generalization here. I'm not saying everybody does this, but as a society, we tell men that their feelings don't matter. We tell men that if they're hurt, they have to suck it up, be tough, pretend they're okay. And if they don't do that, then we label them as feminine by calling them things like pussy, gay, whatever it is. And for many men, hearing those pejorative terms, especially when we're younger, is akin to death. It's like I'm afraid of dying here.
Mm.
And so men very quickly learn to suppress all the feminine generative parts of themselves because they fear that other men are going to take it out on them if they see that they'll think they're weak or gay or whatever and not a quote real man. So yeah, that's that man box is stultifying. It took me a long damn time to break out of it, let me tell you, because I was in it pretty deeply when I first started doing my men's work.
Oh, it's so deep. It's so deep, Rick, that in my podcast early on, it was easier for me to tell listeners that I got a hand job at the adult bookstore and I did all these horrible things,
Right.
but I didn't share that I happen to like the cartoon My Little Pony.
You're right.
And it came to me at a very, very low point. And what it represented for me, Rick, was reclaiming, not just reclaiming the feminine and redefining the masculine, because it's a soothing show. It has good values. And when
Yeah.
I'm my parts are freaking out and I want something to dial it down. But it was easier to say all those things than it was to say, I enjoyed this TV show, because then
Wow.
I hear that voice, that fag,
Oh,
that word that's so toxic. Let me be clear, listeners. I'm not like you hear it, and it's very subtle. And I've learned to, hey, this is cool. You okay? Right. We can do this. And it'd be nothing other than us liking a show in terms of parts work.
mm.
But what you said reminded me of that. And I think that's how deep it is.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's terrifying for many men. I'll tell you something else that really breaks my heart is little boys. When you see little boys, first of all, if you've ever held a newborn baby, you know how precious they are and how they're like a tabula rosa. There's no programming yet. They are free, they're joyful, and they let you know exactly what they need as loudly and clearly as they can. When they're happy, you see this look of joy on their face, and then when they have a need, they'll cry, whatever. Little boys tend to hug each other, kiss each other, play with each other, just like little girls do until about the age of 5, 6 years old. And suddenly it stops. Our wife was a kindergarten teacher, and she said she could see it happening before her eyes. By the end of that kindergarten year, those kids, boys in her class, stopped touching each other, hugging each other. It became anathema for them to do that. It was just unbelievable. And I think we all suffer from that. All our men suffer deeply from lack of healthy, good
Touch.
touch with
Yeah.
other men or with women. All we know is sex. So that's
Sex.
the only way we can get our touch needs met. And that's sad when we can't get that from other men in healthy ways, and other women for that matter.
And fathers, hug your sons.
Your sons and your daughters,
Hug
of course.
your daughters too, because that probably comes more natural to them. But and I remember, Rick, I was the person that introduced hugging into my father and grandfather relationship when I was 30.
Yes, me too. Me too.
And
It wasn't done in those days.
and it felt like I'd climbed Mount Everest.
Exactly.
I'm gonna give you a hug now. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And it was
Instead of
it
shaking
was
hands.
so hug your son's fathers. And so we've got loneliness and the father wound. How do you speak to those in your book, Power Tools for Men, a blueprint for healthy masculinity? Tell me about that.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, I love this book. Leonard Shimchek is my co-author. He's a wonderful man. He's in my men's group. We're in the men's group together. We're very close. We tell each other we love each other all the time.
I
Whenever
love
we
it.
meet, we always hug and kiss. He's just a fantastic human being. And we wrote this book over a 5-year period. We rewrote it 3 times as things happening in the world, COVID and so forth happened. We realized we had to adjust what we were doing. That's why it took so long. Answer your question. We came up with what we think is a beautiful acronym called Classics. It stands for 8 behaviors that we invite men to emulate, to begin to practice, to get out of the man box and to start becoming the whole, precious, generative, beautiful men that I believe we were all meant to be in this planet, Craig. That was one of the fun things about being at the Big Tent, being with a lot of men who were doing that work, and you could just see how connected people were, how joyful they were, how anxious they were to connect with other men.
And Rick, if I may, how
Yeah,
beautifully we were able to disagree.
yeah, exactly.
That was very special to me to see that, because as a lawyer, competitive, I got that training in me, and to see such healthy disagreements and to see men hold that compassionate space for differing opinions was actually beautiful to see.
Thank you so much. So the classics is an acronym that stands for connection, number 1, first behavior. Loving with a big open heart is the L. The A is authenticity and accountability. The
Mm.
first S is spirituality. The second S is sexuality. The I stands for intention, which is all about mission and purpose in life. The last C is for community, and the last S is for sovereignty, stepping into our fully developed kings. So notice the very first thing we advocate is connection. Both connection with our own selves, starting with our own selves, like what is my feeling? What does my body feel like when I'm angry or when I'm sad? Most of us don't know. because we've never been taught that. We are allowed like one feeling for men, right? And that, of course, everybody knows that's anger. Men can
Right.
be angry.
Yes.
We really need to. We can be rageful, but boy, if we're sad, then we're pussies. If we're afraid, we're pussies. If we're joyful, who do you think you are? And so everything's cut off, and we're allowed one feeling. And so connection with ourself means learning what feelings I really have. And of course, we have the same feelings women do. We have the same feelings everyone else does. We just
Right.
don't
Right.
recognize them, we find them in our bodies. Oh, when I'm angry, my gut clenches and my jaw gets tight. Or when I'm sad, I might get tears in my eyes. Whatever. So, and then once we get that connection with ourselves, then the invitation is to connect with other men, and that's done, frankly, most easily in men's groups.
Yeah.
All kinds of men's groups out there. It could be a 12-step group. It could be a church group. I really don't care where you go, but go find a group of men to sit with and be honest with. Tell the truth till it feels good. There's nothing scarier, right, than telling the truth about yourself. As you said,
You're only as
like,
sick as your secrets, right?
exactly. I'm only as sick as my secrets. And I find that when I disclose my secrets, the shame about them dissipates over time. They no longer hold me back because shame, the antidote to shame is sunlight. Bring it out, bring it in the open, talk about it, and those things disappear. So connection is number one. So that is number one antidote, in my opinion, to the isolation. Men learning to be honest with other men, look other men in the eye, hug each other, be honest with each other, tell the truth to each other, hold each other accountable. I mean, men can be slippery on their accountability, on their
Yes,
commitment.
they can.
Oh, it's terrible how and we let each other off the hook constantly because if it's the coward's bargain. If I don't call you on your shit, Craig, you won't call me on mine, right?
That's right. The
Well, on our
coward's bargain. I like that.
it's the coward's bargain. And the opposite of that is, of course, I call you on your stuff lovingly because I care about you and I don't want you to get away with stuff that will keep you from growing. And you'll do the same for me. And a big part of that, of course, is what I call shadow work. It's about noticing the parts of myself that I hide, repress, and deny, that I don't want to talk about, that I want to pretend aren't there. And even though I don't want you to know that, I can see your shadow parts real easily.
Yeah.
And so when you're in a group where you have permission to do that, to help each other see each other's shadows, both gold and dark. I have golden shadows too, beautiful parts of myself that I hide, repress, and deny, that I was told when I was a kid, who do you think you are? Or you think you're so special, or you think you're so smart. I always ask men, how many of you have heard those sayings? And every hand goes up. Everybody's
Yeah.
heard it.
Everyone.
And so we start repressing our beauty, our gifts, our gold. And I was really, really smart in school, and I learned early on that if other people found out about that, how smart I was, I'd get cut off, the tall poppy syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
and got isolated because you think you're so smart, or you think you're smarter than me, or whatever it was. And so we begin to repress those parts of ourselves. We repress the parts of ourselves that are precious. We repress the parts of ourselves that we decide are dark, dangerous, or
Mm.
shameful. And so what does that leave us? This very narrow range where we're allowed to be. I want a huge range for myself and for you and for every other man. I want you to be able to stretch and expand and sometimes be ugly, but do it with some awareness of why you're doing it. And sometimes be beautiful and precious and generative. Sometimes live by a mission and go out in the world and do great works to help people grow and learn and survive. Sometimes be selfish and stay at home and take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this range of expression and experience. And we advocate for that a lot in the book and in the work I do.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What's next? No, wait, before you get there, Rick, one thing I wanted to highlight for you guys listening, do you notice the broader definition of shadow work that a lot of people typically hear? It's not just what's the quote unquote bad stuff that's being suppressed. There are good quote unquote, and my listeners, we do parts work, so they know there are no bad parts. There are good parts there that you repress. For example, my love of this cartoon, which brought me joy, but made me feel like I wasn't a man because I liked it. For simple example.
It's a simple example, but it's a good one. Here's the sad thing, in my opinion. We repress our gold, the precious things that we're capable of doing, more deeply than we do our shadow. You said it's easy for me to talk about getting a hand job in a dirty bookstore. Well, I noticed that in my men's group early on. We guys would talk about the most dark, what would consider to be horrible things that they had done under the guise of trying to heal. But when I said one time, hey, let's talk about how beautiful our love lives are and what we really enjoy about sexuality, there was like dead silence. I mean, and these guys have been together for years and years already, and we're very, very close. I realized that hit some nerves. And I've come to believe that the golden parts of ourselves, our golden shadow, in other words, is more deeply repressed for most of us than our dark or leaden shadows, if you like. And the work of the alchemist, the work of in men's hearts is to convert that leaden shadow into golden shadow.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that gift. I love it. So what's next?
What's next for what? For me?
For love. So we went through connection and
okay.
love. Was there a little bit you wanted to say about each, or pick a couple that really jump out to you? The healthy sexual life, I definitely want to focus on that a little bit. Why don't we go there? Tell me a little.
Okay, cool.
So you know my guys, right? They got caught with a secret sex life, porn, AI girlfriends, OnlyFans, massage parlors. The list of possible secrets that we men can keep is growing by the day. There's a new medium somehow to hide. That's not going to stop. Tell me about that, building a healthy sexual life.
Oof, that's a tough one because it is so, Craig, in my opinion, sexuality and spirituality are so deeply connected that it's hard to separate them. And when our spirituality is shamed or belittled or made or put in a box, like this is
demonized, right? Demonized too,
demonized,
evil,
whatever,
devil, yeah.
then our sexuality gets wounded deeply as well. I believe there's a spiritual wound that it goes completely unacknowledged, and it's particularly pernicious, I believe, in Western countries where there's such a split between religion and spirituality and get confused a lot. And if I believe that my sexual energy is somehow hurtful or wrong or bad, and personally, I got deep messages about that from both my parents. Both my parents were rape survivors and never received any treatment, Craig.
Wow.
So from the day I was born, I was getting, and I'm the oldest of 6 kids. So I was getting these messages, particularly from my mom, about how my sexual energy wasn't okay. It wasn't acceptable.
It's dangerous.
And it was dangerous, exactly. And honestly, it took me a long time to unwind that. It was a huge wound for me and for my siblings too. And it actually took me to get with my current wife, Michelle, who's a sex coach, and we did some amazing healing work. I mean, she was so patient with me to unwind some of that stuff. But if we can connect with our spirituality, then our sexuality becomes so much more generative and beautiful. You know, especially when we're with a partner, a committed partner, we can ask for what we need. We can be playful. We can try stuff out and see what works and what doesn't work for each of us. We can talk openly about our sexuality, about what we want, what we don't want, what works, what doesn't work, and something magical happens. So the connection runs deep, and we find ourselves trusting and connecting at such a deep level. Honestly, it blows me away. It brings tears to my eyes to feel that deep connection with this woman that's my wife. And it doesn't matter if you're gay, bisexual, straight. I don't care. Anybody can have this by doing the deep personal work, connecting with your spiritual self, and then noticing how that influences and impacts your sexuality.
That was so powerful, Rick. And it's a perfect jumping point to the retreat, because when you talk about sexuality, there are few things that are as deeply wired in us than our sexuality.
Exactly.
How we were bathed, how we were changed, comments around our body, like things that, we can't remember. And because it's so deep, there's been a lot of progress in plant medicine helping people unlock that. So
Yeah.
and I want to acknowledge too, I know I have listeners that are really excited to talk about this topic, and I know some that are scared, and some that might even be a little frustrated, maybe a little bit more with me talking. But I have to be clear, if I've learned anything in 13 years helping people professionally, is that different people respond to different things. And I can't ignore the incredible results that clients have had on these retreats. And so I want to talk about them, let you decide as the customer, as the listener, what's right for you. But please, please, please make no mistake, this is the right path for some.
Some. Absolutely. I've been using plant medicine for some time under the auspices of a shaman, a person, indigenous person who's been trained from early on in their lives how to use these substances. I never do it recreationally. I don't do street drugs at all. But I have used mushrooms, some heart medicine, and some ayahuasca to open up my own wounded sexuality, to do some healing, and wounded spirituality for that matter. I mean, it is very, very opening for me to imbibe these medicines, to be with other people who are also on a spiritual quest, imbibing those medicines, and to notice my connection to the divine just becomes so clear, Craig. My connection to the divine becomes so clear that I'm not just this body. I'm not just this mind. I am a soul. I have connection to something far greater than myself. And I can experience in that under the influence of this medicine. And then from there, like my wife says, we can have conversations on medicine that we could never have in person because there's no resistance. When your heart is wide open and you're connected to the divine, I can talk about anything. I have no shame. I have no resistance to discussing whatever it is that may be between us momentarily in our relationship, for example. So I can't do this much in the United States, but in Brazil, all these medicines are legal. And in Brazil, there's ready access to indigenous shaman, amazing men and women who can lead this work. So I have a dear friend who was also at the conference. Chris Wakeman is his name, and he owns, with his Brazilian wife, Mara, he owns this beautiful resort just outside of Rio de Janeiro. It's a gorgeous place. They just remodeled it. It's on the top of a hill overlooking the ocean. It's a 5-minute walk from the beach.
Wow.
I'm taking a dozen men down there for a full week, and we're going to do a deep dive into men's work using my book and Leonard's book as a guide, a lens through which to look at men's work, supplemented by 2 amazing ayahuasca journeys facilitated by a shaman that works down there. I can't wait. It starts July 7th, 2025, ends on the 13th. There are a few slots available. If some of your listeners are interested, they can contact me. I would love to fill it up all the way. It's about half full right now. And we're gonna do some deeply transformative work while we're down there together as men, with men, by men.
That is so awesome. And I know, so if you're listening and you're thinking, is Craig thinking of me? There's a good chance that I might be. And I know, you clients are listening to this podcast and this lesson too. So you can reach out to me directly, give you the 411 on Rick. You guys know this is a sacred place, and my connection with Rick was real. It was powerful. And when I heard he was doing this retreat,
The Cuanadero, which is the shaman in Brazil, also brings along musicians that play this really beautiful, incredible music to bring you into the state. All of that comes together, and we do some fasting before we start. We don't eat a big meal and then take some ayahuasca. And it's never done recreationally. It's done with intention. It's done with the specific intention of growing spiritually. And that's what the shaman's after. That's all that the shaman is after, to support each of us in what needs to happen. A so-called bad trip can happen. I'm not saying it can't. And what makes it bad? That you bumped up against some really dark shadow stuff that you've been avoiding? Or,
Exactly.
right. Well, in the long run, that may become your best journey ever, because you go, oh shit, I've been holding back on that stuff for all my life. And suddenly the medicine puts it in front of me, and it isn't comfortable. It isn't fun.
Oh,
I
and
didn't say
that's
it was
what
going to be comfortable or fun. Go ahead.
it's what I feel like that which I stuffed down came up in my recent IFS training. So I've already made that connection, and yeah, the intention is critically important, men, and the container, having a facilitator who knows what they're doing, who can lead you on that journey. And I want to kind of issue a strong recommendation against not taking these things into your own hands. It's easier to do now than it was years ago because of the online, but please, 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 the risks are great, aren't they, Rick? They're so great.
Well, they're great for an individual who is not doing the work that needs to be done. And then, as you
Right.
said, the bad trip can be terrifying. And also, sometimes you're so opened up psychically and spiritually that you come up against an egoless state, which is like, where am I? I've disappeared. And that's terrifying. For many people, for Buddhists, that's nirvana.
I
That's
made it. Yes.
it, exactly. But that it can be very, very terrifying. So having that facilitator there who's right there next to you, watching your body, watching the energy, they're energy readers, watching what's going on and supporting you is really, really important, in my opinion. Again, I wouldn't dream of doing any of these things just recreationally without that kind of support.
Yeah, no, I respect that advice. Okay, so how do people get involved in this retreat? It's coming up soon. Share those date with us again,
Sure.
Rick, and let guys know how they can contact you. And what I want everybody to know, this will all be in the notes. So you're going to get the links to the books. You're going to get a way to contact Rick. You're going to get a link to his websites, his social media, everything that you want, and also a link to the retreat. But for those listening, what do they do?
Well, the quickest way to get a hold of me is either by email or give me a call. I don't mind. I'll talk to anybody. My email is, you have it in the list. You want me to say it out loud?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna put that in the liner notes too, and I'll put your phone number there. That's okay too.
Number there. Call me, text me, email me, say, Rick, I'm interested. I'll send you flyers or information. In the run up to this training, we're having meetings with the group of men. They're getting to know each other really well. They're getting to set their intentions for the whole week and, getting travel arrangements made, that kind of thing. Because it's not easy to travel to Rio de Janeiro. It's a 20 to 28-hour flight.
Yeah. Oh man, that sounds so exciting. This is not my time, but I know my time will come. Parting words for the men listening to this, Rick. What are you inspired to share with the peoples whose voice we've captivated?
Here's what I'm inspired to share. I don't believe there's no such a thing as toxic masculinity. I believe that men, when they're given the chance, are beautiful, precious, generative, constructive, connected beings who do amazingly beautiful things in the world. I believe there's men that haven't done the work they need to do. They're damaged and they do some hurtful things. Yes, I'm fully aware of that. I've done it myself. I still do it from time to time, not very frequently anymore, but it's in me. But I want men to hear that I believe in you and I know you can change. I know you can grow. I know you can become more successful in your life, not financially. That's not what I'm after myself. It's successful in relationships and connecting deeply and authentically with the people in your life, your partner, your children, if you have them. I have 6 grandchildren I get to play with, and other men and women in your life. Don't miss that opportunity to do the work to bring you closer to yourself and bring you closer to other people. It makes a profound difference in my life, and I know it will in yours too.
Wow, guys, did you feel that? Like I felt that right in my heart, man. You can tell this brother's speaking truth. Rick, thank you so much for being here, man. I'm honored for our new friendship, our new
Yeah.
connection. I'm diving into your book and I'm like seeing so much that I love and that I want to share. So I see you, brother. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Craig. I see you too, and I really appreciate the time. I'm grateful that you're getting this out to your audience. I'm sure there's a beautiful group of men that will benefit from our talk here today. Blessings to you, my friend.
Blessings to you. Thank you guys for listening. Embrace your power of choice. Feed the right wolf inside you. And I'll see you next time. Stay hungry, brothers. Bye, guys.
All right.